I want to thank you for joining me on a little YouTube mini video here. I call this Beware of the Winter. I want to share something with you that most of you probably are not familiar with. And to explain this, I need to go into about a minute or two teaching of biblical translations. The Bible was originally written in the Koine Greek language. Jerome went to Bethlehem, and I believe this was somewhere around the 4th century, and he began to translate the Bible from the Hebrew and the Greek. Of course, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, into the Latin language, and he did that for the Catholic Church. When the King James translators translated the Bible, they basically used the Western documents of the church in order to translate the Bible into the English language. There was another translation which was known among what we call the Eastern branch of the church. Now, the Western branch of the early church, and I say the early church, we're going back now into very early times. The Western branch was considered Catholic, and that word means universal, the universal church. And the Eastern branch was the Orthodox Church, for example, the Greek Orthodox Church. And so there's a difference, as there was a split many years later in the Roman Church between the Orthodox and, of course, between the Catholic Church. And I won't get into all that because that's irrelevant to the study. Many years ago, the Eastern branch of the church had a translation of the Bible, which is in the Aramaic language. We have some friends in Bethlehem, the Nissan brothers, who are from the Syrian Aramaic church, and therefore their Bibles are translated in they're actually in the original Syriac Aramaic, and they always remind you that that was the language that the Lord spoke, which it was back in the areas of the Galilee. Well, there was a man by the name of George Lamsa that translated the Bible, and it happens to be called the Lamsa translation, just like when King James took the scholars and began to translate the English Bible. It's called the King James translation. There's something very unusual that appears in the Lamsa translation, which is in the Greek, or what we would say the Greek Orthodox branch of the church, or the Orthodox branch is a better way of saying it, that George Lamsa translated out of Luke 21, 10 through 11. Now, you can read the translation from the King James translation and you see what it is. But when you take the Lamsa translation from the Eastern branch of the church, from the Aramaic translation, there is another phrase that is attributed to Jesus that is very interesting, that relates to the time that we're now in. Now, I'm going to read to you Luke 21, 10 through 11 from the Lamsa translation. And when you hear of wars and revolutions, do not be afraid, for all these things must first come to pass, but the end is not yet. It's very similar, of course, to the King James translation. Here's something else very similar to the English translation of the King James. There'll be earthquakes in different places, and famines and plagues, and there will be alarming signs and great signs that will appear in heaven. That's in the King James translation. Now, in the Eastern Aramaic Bible, it says this: and the winters shall be severe. And that is attributed to a statement that Jesus made, that is in the Eastern translation, or the Aramaic translation. Now, keep in mind that John said that if all the books of the world could not contain the words and the miracles that Jesus did, all the books in the world, so we only have a representation there. But somehow this is recorded that the winters would be severe. Now, why am I sharing this with you? Because there are some very strange things happening that have been happening for the past several years. I remember in the 90s when Al Gore began to teach a lot about global warming, that some of the statements he was making is that the winters have disappeared, there was no snow in DC, that the winters are just like the summer, therefore the globe was warming. And it was a few years after that all of a sudden we did this complete switch, and the weather became so cold and so severely cold that, for example, a few years ago in Cleveland, Tennessee, we had 4 snowstorms, which is almost unheard of here. There were also, about a year ago, 2 years ago, I should say, there was record-breaking cold all over Europe, in Canada, in the United States. Records were being broken. It was snowing in early fall. It was snowing in late spring. And so I began to see this happening, this transition take place, where it got very severely cold. And I began to think about where this statement was made, attributed to Christ, again in the Aramaic translation of the New Testament, that the winters would become severe. Now, of course, the phrase global warming, when the winters begin to get more severe, was changed to climate change. Therefore, when you say climate change, it can cover both whether it's extremely hot, like a drought, or whether it's extremely cold. So I don't want to make everything spiritual, and I want you to listen to me for just a moment. I don't want to make everything spiritual, but people say, why do you think that the atmosphere is changing the way it is? Well, again, from a scientific perspective, some scientists will say global warming or climate change. I look at things, being a minister who studies the Bible, that has over 175,000 hours of Bible study, I try to look at things of saying, is there a spiritual application? In Revelation 12, when Satan comes down with great wrath, knowing he has but a short time, the weather goes crazy and there are serious floods that begin to happen to the point that it can actually drown people that are in parts of the Middle East. We also find out in the book of Job that Satan sent a whirlwind that destroyed Job's house and killed 10 of his children. He sent lightning and killed thousands of sheep. And so I don't know how much control in the prince of the power of the air, this is what Satan is called in the New Testament, has over elements, or at times over elements, or how much is just natural versus how much could be, let's say, manipulated in the spirit realm. But I do know that is an example where it can happen. I know that when Jesus was in a boat in Galilee, the Bible says a great storm arose, and that Greek word is seismos, which is an underwater earthquake that shook the waves, that literally filled the boat with waves, and it was a miracle that the boat continued to float. So I just want to say this to you in with this idea of beware of this winter, that the Farmer's Almanac, which really is not that wrong, to be honest with you, it's amazing, and the cycles that the news people are talking about as far as meteorologists and those involved with weather, that this coming winter is planning on, in many areas, they say the northeast, the Midwest up in the north, parts of the Midwest, etc., very, very severe cold weather. I don't know about accumulation of snow and ice. I don't know anything about that. But I have heard, get ready for a very cold winter. Now, having said that, if the specialists are saying that, and of course, if this statement that I do believe was attributed to Christ about the winters being severe, what does that mean? Well, that means when the ant sees the winter coming, it prepares. So you have to prepare. Texas, the power went out in Texas, and one of the big concerns is the power grid going out where there's no electricity and no heat. And of course, the wind turbines froze up. And so there could be a lot of things that happen. So what we have to do is say, okay, how do we prepare for an event if the winter becomes severe? So for those of you that deal with these type of things, of course, when we get a snow here, we had a snow here one time in Cleveland that was two feet deep. Wasn't a thing you could do about it. My water pipes busted in my office, and it was a mess. Thank the Lord, Charlie, who's behind this little phone camera here, saved the day by cutting off the water. But a lot of things can happen when it gets severe. You got to check out your pipes. Keep, and I'm not the specialist here. Check with people to know how to do this to keep the pipes from breaking. Making sure you have some type of heat, whether it's whatever. Just what I'm saying is, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I do feel like that in many areas we need to prepare for a very, very harsh winter, and that's what the specialists are saying. But the other thing is that I know when we book our meetings, we try to go to South Texas and Florida, or way as far south as we can in January and February, because we know how severe the weather can be in the Northeast and other places. So we just need to stick together, pray together, and hope for the best in this. But again, beware of the winter, and keep your ears open for that. But don't wait too late to prepare, because everybody panics at the last minute, and you don't want to be involved with that. All right, keep watching. We have some new material coming out. We have a prophetic summit that we just did that we'd like for you to get. If you'd like to get that, there'll be an advertisement on that coming up on this. So God bless you. Greetings, everyone. This is Perry Stone, and I have a great announcement for you. I'm now making available to each of you the International Prophetic Summit, the greatest summit I was ever able to participate in. These are available on CD and DVD albums. There are 11 messages in all by myself, Bill Cloud, Mark Biltz, and also Joel Richardson. Let me just give you the titles you're going to hear. Is the Seven Sealed Book Now Being Opened? The parable of the fig tree and what it means for America. What would Jesus do during this present civil war? A biblical response to aliens and UFOs. I preached a message called The Green New Deal and its economic impact on your family. Another great message that was preached. A word for America from the prophecy of Habakkuk. Another message is called What Time Is It? Bill Cloud stunned the audience with a message called Beware of the Aviv Rav. I preached a message called Answering Tough Apocalyptic Questions That No One is Answering. Mark Biltz came back and preached a message called Jeremiah is a Prophet for Our Day. I closed the conference out with this message, Should You Prepare for a Pele Transition? Now I want to say something to you. It is a right now word. They are prophetic. They answer questions. And these are the unedited versions of the message. Now listen to me. On the Manifest telecast, you only get about 20 to 21 minutes of a message. I still have another 40 minutes to preach. Not only that, but we never show the speaker's messages, and sometimes some of the information they share is for certain at-home ears only. It really would be rejected if it was put on social media. So I'm going to tell you how to get this series. If you want to get the CD album, the number is 21PS CD, and it's for $65 or more donation. If you would like to get the DVDs, and can I suggest to you to get the DVDs because, especially with Mark Biltz, they have PowerPoint pictures. I show you pictures in my messages, and people really seem to enjoy that. But the DVDs are offer number 21PS DVD for $95. Now here's how you order. You can call toll-free 1-888-21-BREAD, order that way, or you can contact perrystone.org on the internet, log on and order online, or just send us a check to Perry Stone, P.O. Box 3595, Cleveland, Tennessee 37320. Now remember this, that those checks and those orders go 100% to the Voice of Evangelism Ministry to help keep the Manifest program on the air. Now we're living in the greatest prophetic times that there's ever been. There is a clash between two kingdoms taking place. You are only arming yourself properly if you are armed with revelation knowledge and the truth of God's Word. May I encourage you, call, go online, or write me right now. God bless you.